Hello everyone, and thank you for coming back to yet another episode of The Gloving Paradigm. I am your host Peter, aka LPD Dubuque, and this week's very interesting week. So first things first, I just want to let everybody know who is not necessarily in the loop yet. There is another season of Lights On that is registration starting up in the next couple of days as the time of this recording. I'm sure registration will be up, ready to go by the time this episode posts on Monday, so just wanted to give all my listeners a quick heads up that is happening. If you intend on entering this competition, I do admonish you to try to get your registration in as early as possible, as well as listen to my previous episode, which is the intro to competitive gloving, to give you a good idea of what you need to know and what to expect when you go into these competitions. Alright, I just wanted to get that out of the way so you guys know about it, and now we can get into the nitty gritty of this episode. So, what is this week's topic going to be about? It's very simple because it's always been talked about. Every now and then somebody will ask about it, and there is a whole swath of comments and advice and all this stuff that people like to post when it comes to this topic. And the topic that I'm covering is Glover's Block. Now, I can certainly sit here and tell people that I find it interesting that there are people out there that say that it doesn't exist. And I find that very interesting because if you say that Glover's Block doesn't exist, yet Writer's Block exists, that doesn't make any sense to me how one can exist and one cannot. So, what is Glover's Block? Which is pretty much the same as Writer's Block, which I'm assuming is where the term came from, considering that it's a very common literary term. The definition I'm going to be explaining is of writer's block, and we can pretty much tailor it to Glover's block at the same time, so just kind of bear with me on that. So the definition of writer's block is the condition of being unable to think of what to write or how to proceed with writing. So in this case of gloving, it's not necessarily what to glove or how to proceed with gloving necessarily, but it does kind of tie in. And when it comes to the definition of writer's block and you try to apply it to Glover's block, which how I did it was pretty simple in my opinion. Glover's not knowing how to proceed with gloving is an acceptable form of Glover's block, and it's not necessarily like they don't know where to go with it in terms of their goals. It's more of just, you're in this state where you just don't know where the next step is. And that's totally fine. It's perfectly natural to actually hit those points of where you just don't know where to go next. And, it's kind of where you're at these crossroads of, now I'm at this point where I can go in any direction, but I just don't know which direction I should take. So that being one form of Glover's block that I do accept is a way to be considered Glover's block. Another one that I actually consider is something like Glover's having difficulty mastering a concept archetype is another acceptable form in my opinion. And it's not necessarily like you're just unable to learn it. It's just, the way that you naturally learn things is probably not being portrayed or even conveyed through the manner that you are learning these concept archetypes, basically. Which is totally understandable. I will even admit, and I've said it time and time again on my podcast, that I've had problems learning certain concept archetypes. Everyone should know that tutting was a very difficult one for me, and it took me probably a good 6 months of actually trying and actually meeting up with somebody and them actually teaching me a very simple way to learn it and learning that way. So Glover block does exist. It is a real thing, and it's not necessarily like this whole mentality thing, because when we look at writer's block as a case study, it kind of makes more sense of it being an actual legitimate thing. I find it interesting that some people would say only certain aspects of art can suffer from this, yet others can't, when that's not necessarily true in my opinion. In my opinion, any form of art can actually have a block due to just creative differences or just different methods of inspiration or things of that nature, So, flawless segue, what causes these blocks? Well, there are many different causes that could be in effect that most people don't really take into consideration. And it's just something that I don't think a lot of people actually want to think about because it may cause them stress. I don't know. But one of the big ones that I've read when it came to writer's block is creative causes. The lack of creativity could be one where you just don't feel your creative juices flowing, which is a natural phenomenon. Things like that do happen where you just have these moments where just nothing's coming to you, and you don't have any muses or inspirations happening to get these creative juices flowing. That's just something that tends to do happen. I will even admit through my own other personal hobbies, whether it be gloving or creative writing or anything that takes a creative aspect, there are times where I have the mood to do it and there's times where I don't. And it's just, one of those natural things in my opinion. Lack of inspiration is a perfect example where you just, when there's nothing inspiring you to create things in a creative way, then your lack of creativity is now in play because of your lack of inspiration. And it again, with a lot of artists, regardless of the art form that they're taking, whether it be painting, drawing, gloving, dancing, writing, sculpting, whatever the case may be, you do have to have this sense of inspiration to make you have that motivation of creativity to happen. So having that lack of inspiration is something that normally happens. And from my experience within my own other personal hobbies is that, when I'm not in the mood, I'm not in the mood. I can't force it. And that's one of the big things I always want to explain to a lot of people when it comes to blocks happening, is that you can't force yourself to get better, in essence, when you're just not mentally there. You know what I mean? It's just, if you just can't do it at that time, you just can't do it at that time. And it's not necessarily like something you should be ashamed of or you should be scorned for. It's just something where, if it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen at the time. And forcing it is going to make it even worse for yourself, in my opinion. Okay. Another perfect example of what could cause writers/glovers block is, distractions from other events, whether it be, like if your wife is pregnant and is now having a kid, that's a distraction. You got work, that's a distraction. You got things at home that you have to do, bills that you have to pay, chores that you have to keep up on. There are just natural distractions that you have to do in your daily life. And there's nothing wrong with that. In my opinion, when that tends to happen a lot for you, you just need to kind of reprioritize some things so that way you're not stressing yourself out. Big things that a lot of people need to understand is that adverse circumstances do play a role in writer's block, or in glover's block in this case, since this is about gloving, is that there are things that do happen. Physical illness is a thing that will happen. You'll get sick eventually and you just aren't able to have that creativity because you're just more afflicted on dealing with this illness rather than trying to create something. And I will certainly say the people who are sick and they want to glove, sure, go ahead. I recommend not doing it because your body needs energy to fight off the invader that's in your body. And that's why you always get the body aches. It's because your body's telling you to stop moving around. I need the energy to fight this off for you. Other things, mental situations such as like depression. And I'm not going to get into all these different disorders and stuff, but people who have mental conditions, as I refer to them, that's something that needs to take priority when it's actually afflicting you in some manner, because that's something that's kind of blocking you from actually being creative. Now, when I was reading through writer's block, pretty much a lot of people and a lot of doctors have done a lot of tests and stuff, is that your cerebral cortex is what helps you drive with the creativity and pretty much process a lot of things. What tends to happen when the human body becomes stressed, the brain functions leaves the central cortex and actually goes into the limbic system. Now, if you guys don't know, the limbic system is pretty much the thing that controls your fight or flight response, where it's literally trying to keep you alive. Now, I'm not saying that when you have these certain situations is that, you're in a life or death situation, but it's your body reacting to protect itself. And once the limbic system takes center stage in terms of control, your creativity is lost. And that's one of the major things that will happen, is that your bodily functions will just take control, and there's not really anything you can do about it, because most people don't really feel the change from the central cortex to the limbic system, except for the acceleration of the heart rate and anxiety starting to flutter, things like that. Yes, that is a good indicator, but you can't really stop your brain necessarily from doing that. It's a natural defense mechanism, so the body can keep itself intact and protect itself. So keeping in mind that sometimes will happen, and what you just need to do is figure out what's causing that kind of stress and fixing it. Financial issues is one of the big ones that I know a lot of people always suffer through. I'm one of those people who, I loathe bills, I loathe all this finance stuff, but it is absolutely necessary for me to actually keep going and doing the things I want to do, is having to maintain that. So keeping your priorities straight to help minimize the limbic system taking control effect is going to be one huge ways. And another big one in terms of the adverse circumstances is just insecurities. I can totally understand when people get very nervous to try to record in front of a camera. I can understand when you're out at an event or at a festival and you get really nervous because you now have this crowd around you where you're not very used to having a crowd around you. I can certainly tell you that there's been times where I can have a small crowd and be okay, but as soon as it gets to a certain threshold, I can feel my legs literally starting to shake, because I can feel all the eyes on me doing what I need to do, and that's something that can happen. So things of that nature you do need to not necessarily address, but you do need to recognize and figure out what works best for you to overcome that. Okay, which is another great segue on advices how to overcome Glover's block. Now, I didn't really ask the question so everyone can respond, because I saw a couple of posts that are very recent that were talking about Glover's block, and so I kind of just scoured through all the comments and read everything that people were saying to kind of get an idea and gauge where the community sits when it comes to Glover's block. Now, I will certainly say there is a small camp of people who say that Glover's block is an illusion and it's just all in your head and that you're just psyching yourself out. But to me, isn't that the essence of block, basically? Whether it be writer's block or Glover's block or whatever block that it is, isn't that in essence the block that's causing it to happen? Like, that's just my thought process. If you're saying that is a mentality thing, isn't the mentality of Glover's block the block itself, So, I don't know. That's just something I kind of want to throw out there. So, besides that, and there's another advice that a lot of people are saying. I am not going to say it on here because that is not what this show is about, nor do I condone the action of doing it. However, like I said in previous episodes, most of you are adults. I would certainly say people who are under the age of 18 should not be doing this. But the people over 18, you are officially an illegal adult. I can't make you do what I tell you to do. I'm not forcing you to do the things to tell you. I just admonish you that if you're going to do things like that, just to educate yourself and understand what it is that you are doing before you do it. That is all I'm going to say on that. So, one of the biggest advice that people give is taking a break. Now, one of the big things that I will even say to myself through my own personal hobbies is that you can actually oversaturate yourself with it. There's this theory called the cognitive inertia theory. And I kind of actually like using this as an example for this because it does make sense to me, and I'm hoping that it will make sense to you. So, the cognitive inertia theory is a very simple theory about ignorance in terms of knowledge on a subject matter. So, if you look at a graph, like an XY graph, which is pretty simple, just, take your left hand and make the L shape with it. Your x-axis is the knowledge on the subject matter, whether it be gloving, painting, whatever the subject matter may be. And then the y-axis is the ignorance on subject matter, okay? So the less you know, the higher your ignorance is on the subject matter. But the more you know, the less of your ignorance. Now, there is a certain point that you can know so much on the subject matter that your ignorance starts going back up. This can be applied to gloving as a whole, in my opinion, because it makes sense. you have so much ignorance about gloving at the very, very beginning, and as time goes on, you become less and less ignorant. But once you actually start putting so much time and effort in understanding gloving as a whole, your ignorance is going to start shooting back up. That's where I feel like Glover Box comes in at times, is that you oversaturate yourself with so much of the subject matter that it's pretty much causing the block itself. And taking a break is the best way to do that. And what you should be doing while you take these break is pretty simple to me. Work on other hobbies that you might have. Like for me, I like playing Magic the Gathering. So when I want to take a break from gloving, I work on deck building for Magic the Gathering. I have friends who always hit me up about helping them build decks. So I will literally help them build decks and give them advice on how to build it and what cards they should do and help them with their sideboard if they need to. It distracts me from gloving, so when I come back to it, I can actually have a fresh set of eyes. That whole oversaturation of the art will cause, in my opinion, will cause that. So taking a break and working on other things help pretty much clear your mind of the saturation that you've been doing. And not only that, is that you can actually get ideas from other hobbies to tie into gloving. Now, I can certainly say Magic the Gathering is not going to provide that in that essence. However, it does make me focus on something else that when I actually come back to it, I have a fresh set of eyes and a different way of thinking to actually try to tackle it in a new way of thinking. So working on other hobbies is a great way to actually take a break from gloving. And I know some people will tell you to work through the block, but trust me, taking a break is very healthy. It allows you to kind of just reset things in your head and actually allow you to look at something again that you haven't looked at in a while and all of a sudden see it in a new way. So that's one of the big things that I always want to try to tell newcomers to do when they need to take a break. Another good one is that focus on other life aspects that are going on in your life. Maybe the block is being caused by financial stress or by family turmoil, is a lack of a better phrase. Certain priorities are starting to really stress you out, and it's causing your Glover's block, which is totally understandable. Life has a tendency of throwing a wrench in the cogs. That's how life tends to be. It tends to unbalance itself on purpose, just for the fun of it. Basically, is how I always see it. So just kind of reprioritizing everything that you got going on is going to help you kind of clear your mind of any stresses or any insecurities or anything that's causing you stress. Eliminating the stress is going to be a very good way to do that. Whatever the case may be. Like for me, if I'm being very stressed out, I tend to go and meditate. Meditation really helps me clear my head, and maybe that's what you need to do before you do every gloving practice session, is to take about a good 15-20 minutes just to meditate and clear your head. So when you go into doing your practice, you can actually have a clear mind to work with. So that's just one of the things I try to do. And another great thing that I try to tell people to do is try out new things. Now, I'm not saying that you need to go out there and like buy poi and do poi or anything like that. I'm just saying just simple things like just something that you normally don't do in your regular routine is a good way to kind of change how you think about things and how you approach things. So, like just trying to go to a restaurant that you've never been before, or trying out a cuisine that you never tried before. Like, for example, I'm a person who grew up on a Pennsylvania Dutch diet, which, if you guys don't know, is pretty much in the summary of Pennsylvania Dutch food, is hot, brown, and bland. Okay, so for me, I never really tried fish. So if I'm having a Glover's block moment, I'm going to try new things. I'm going to go try fish. I've never tried fish before. Might as well go and try it. So you go to a place that serves good fish. Of course, always ask for recommendations from people around town that that can help you, guide you into a good place in terms of trying out new things. That's something that I would do because it's literally something I never tried before, and therefore I'm learning from new experiences. And learning from new experiences is going to help you, in my opinion at least, help you approach things in a different way. And it's just because you never approached something like that before, for example, trying out new things, that you're now going to have a new way of looking at things. So in terms of taking a break, those are my advices, what you should do on your breaks. Another thing that you can also do on your breaks, but this is a huge thing that a lot of people were saying in comments, is discipline training. Now, when it comes to discipline training, is, in my opinion, very, very easy. Is, mastering things that you already know. So with the repertoire and the catalog that you have in your gloving repertoire, as I always call it, focus on those of what you already know and try to literally get into a point where it's almost second nature to you. Not necessarily muscle memory, just literally where your brain can do it without you actively thinking on doing it. Now, I know a lot of people are probably going to construe that into muscle memory, which at first it will be in muscle memory, but at a certain point it becomes second nature. It's just like how driving is for me. I can literally my brain can be completely turned off, and I can literally get from point A to point B without even realizing it. That's how crazy it is. That to me is second nature, is where you literally can be like that, where you can drive from point A to point B and not even have cognitively actively knowing that you're getting there. So mastering what you know is a very good way, even like going back down to just the basics and starting to do that. Another great idea that I always like to tell people is deconstructionalism. Where you actually take the concepts that you know and literally deconstruct them down to their smallest parts, so you can literally learn the ins and outs of each concept archetype and actually build from there. So, those are things that you need to think of. Another great resource, in my opinion, and fantastic resource, especially when it comes to gloving, is yougotmoves.com. On there is pretty much a e-learning academy for gloving, is where well-known glovers who have put a lot of time and effort into the craft will actually expound their knowledge through paid videos to help you through it. And there's actually 6 videos on there from what I've read in comments on Glover's Block alone that you can actually use to work with. So definitely wanted to give a shout out to that website, just because they are one of the driving forces of helping people through Glover's Block, as well as learning new concepts and expanding on their gloving. I highly recommend anyone who actually will spend the time to actually do it, to do so. The best way I'm going to put this is how my mom puts it in terms of consultations in law. Okay. Within 1 hour of a consultation, you can learn almost everything you need to know about your case and how to attack it. Just like yougotmoves.com, I'm not saying that it's going to take a whole hour, but I'm just using it as a point of reference. An hour with a well-known glover who is able to expound their knowledge of gloving onto you is going to exponentially help you way more than just doing it on your own. Okay? So just keep that in mind when it comes to yougotmoves.com. It's just like how consultations in law work. Within 1 hour, you can pretty much know everything about your case and how to tackle it. Just like with gloving, you'll learn everything that you need to know of how to tackle gloving and how to overcome Glover's Block. Okay, so do keep that in mind. Another great way about overcoming Glover's Block is once you actually kind of like, in my opinion, taking these and actually using them in tandem with each other is actually going to be probably, in my opinion, the best way to do it. So finding inspiration to actually help you with the creative juices to start flowing is another great way to get over Glover's Block. One thing that I always did when I actually took a break and actually was getting back into gloving kind of deal is to actually watch videos. And you can do it on the lounge, you can do it on Art Gloving, you can do it on YouTube, wherever platform you want to do it on, go ahead. Reddit is another great one that you can use as well. One big one I always try to encourage is watching competition videos. Now, I'm not saying to do this to learn about competition, is that with competitors, they tend to push the envelope in terms of ideas and concepts and things of that nature to kind of wow the audience as well as wowing the judges. Well, that right there is a wonderful resource that you can actually be like, hey, that's a cool new concept that I want to try out, and you practice and expand on that. That's one easy way of doing it. Another great idea is outside influences. Mostly what I'm talking about is like dance, using other dance forms to bring in, whether it be part of the classical ballroom setup or, the more modern takes on stuff. If you actually just go through what gloving is already pulling its inspirations from, like popping and locking and hip hop and breakdancing and things like that, you can actually really kind of realign how the upbringings of gloving came to be. There's granted tutting is its own thing as well. You can also do that. A lot of the ways that I've learned the moves for gloving were from where we actually pull our inspiration from. So when I actually want to learn about king tutting, I learned from tutters rather than glovers mostly. I will certainly say when it came to king tutting, yes, I learned from YouTube, from outside of the gloving community. But when it came to like regular tutting, yes, I actually did outside influences, but it also took me working with somebody in person in order to get it. So, when it comes to trying to overcome Glover's block, you gotta not just sit there and be like, okay, I'm gonna do this one thing and hopefully that works. No, you gotta kind of combine all these ideas and, put them together and make them work that way. And at least that's how I'm doing it. I don't know how you guys are gonna do it. I would love to hear how you guys do it. So, another fantastic idea that I always like doing is light tinkering. And I know not a lot of people like doing this, but kind of hear me out on this. I'm not saying that you need to develop a whole new color set and flash pattern set type deal. Just literally, if you actually have the resources to do it, just sit there with one of your lights and literally just tinker around with it in terms of flashing patterns, in terms of color combinations, in terms of if the accelerometer feature is available, to actually tinker around with the accelerometer more so you can actually figure out these cool ideas that you can do with the lights, because then you can actually be like, okay, what moves can I actually accentuate with this? And that gives you more ideas. So I always tell people, tinker around with your lights, learn the ins and outs of your lights, because it also will help you understand, okay, with certain moves I can do certain effects with my lights. So, why not do that? Okay. So, with all of those in mind, I am going to pretty much close this episode with my advice of what to do when it comes to Glover's block, because I believe Glover's block exists. It does exist in my eyes. It does happen. It happens to anyone who's in any artistic expression field, whether it be writing, painting, sculpting, gloving, dancing, whatever the case may be. Flow arts is another great example. So, the first thing that I would actually advise you to do is just simply taking a break, because you're probably oversaturating yourself with the craft, and when that tends to happen, you just have so much information that your brain just doesn't know how to process it all and apply it. So taking a break is the best first step that you can do. And usually what I tend to do is, when I'm taking a break, is figure out if my priorities are in order. And handling your priorities is probably one of the biggest things you can do while taking your break, just to make sure that things are in place and that you don't have to be stressed out about. Another great thing is taking up something like meditation. Like I said previously, meditation is a great way to help clear your mind. It allows you to kind of reset your mind into a state where you're allowed to absorb rather than be confounded by all the knowledge you know. A great example is something like Yoda said in Star Wars: you need to unlearn what you have learned in order to proceed. Okay? In order to master it, basically. So, you don't have to take up meditation. You can take up whatever activity that helps clear your mind. I know people take up jogging. If you're an active person like that, you can do that. Martial arts if you want to. Martial arts, in my opinion, is a great way to focus your mind on tasks like that, and it gives you the discipline that you need to maintain it. So, whatever that may be, just another hobby, basically. I just happen to take up meditation as a way to help me with that. So, whatever works for you, through trial and error, as I said in many different episodes, through trial and error, you gotta find out what works for you. And the only way you're gonna find that out is trying out new things, of course. That's another great point that I always like to say, is just try out new things, because you'll actually find something that causes inspiration that way. Drawing out from outside inspirations is another great one. Dance is a perfect example of where you should actually be looking, because we are considered an art dance form, as most people like to say. So why not draw inspiration from other dance forms to bring in, watch contemporary dancing or ballroom dancing or hip hop, or animation is another great one. just things that you can bring from the outside into your gloving, you know. And the final piece of advice that I know that a lot of people might yell at me because it's not as easy as the rest, but connecting with other glovers, especially in person, I find it invaluable the amount of things that can happen between two people in person rather over, say, the internet. Now, if you're in a situation where you don't have many glovers around you, that you have no choice but to connect with them on the internet, I do recommend going on Reddit. Reddit is a great place to talk to a lot of glovers. They're very, very vocal on that platform, and they're very informative, and they're very willing to help out. So Reddit is a great resource in my opinion. Now, you can do Glover's Lounge. I can certainly hear people in the background right now saying, "Well, Glover's Lounge is so toxic. Why would you do that?" You know, it's I understand that, and it's something that has always been around. However, it is pretty much the central hub where we all kind of talk. Well, most of us, but you know, it is a place where we all gather to actually converse with each other. Now, you also have Art of Gloving, which sometimes you see it very active, sometimes you don't. You know, it is what it is. So you do have Art of Gloving that you can work with. You know, if Glover's Lounge is not something for you, you have Art of Gloving. And if both of those aren't working for you, Reddit's another great place to go. Okay, so that's pretty much all of my advice for you guys. I hope that this information really helps with understanding what it is about Glover's Block, why it's caused by outside influences, what you need to do to try to overcome it. You know, if you have other ways of overcoming Glover's Block, I would love to know. It would be most helpful for me to be able to give this information to newcomers, because I find it so difficult for newcomers to actually get the information that they're looking for at times without having to trudge through all the meme-ish stuff that people like to do on terms of comments. So, you know, I'm trying to do my best to give you guys the clearest and most accurate information possible to actually help you work through this and actually become better as a glover altogether. So please let me know what you guys have, you know, tried and what has worked for you in terms of overcoming Glover's Block. I would love to know. There are many places that you can hit me up at. First place that you can always do is at the Facebook page, which is aptly named The Gloving Paradigm. You can also hit me up at my email, which is muttonchopguy@gmail.com. I am also on Reddit, which is under the username muttonchopguy, so don't hesitate to tag me up there so I can contact with you. And of course, there do have this Discord server, which I know I've been kind of neglecting to use, and I need to figure out how to use it more often so I can get more engagements on there. But I will have a link to that in the episode's description, so don't hesitate to click on that and join on my Discord. I would love to have you guys on there. It would be a great platform for us to actually sit there and discuss. I would love to hear everything you guys have to say. Once again, I would like to thank everyone who has been listening to this show. If it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be able to keep going, because who would listen to me if there was no one to listen to me in the first place, you know? So once again, thank you guys for listening and supporting the show as much as you can. That is all for this episode. So I am your host, Peter, aka LPD8 the Buke, and I'll see you guys all next week.